Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of Teams Like Brighton. And I want to give a little bit of a surprise as well to Richie too, that this podcast is finally going to be on the audio airwaves soon enough. Richie is delighted for that news. But
Yep, very happy.
look, let's move on very quickly because we've got so much to talk about, starting with the weekend. Because Richie, we've got to say this, what a game we saw at the Amex. It was an absolute spectacle, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, I think we predicted maybe 2-1 home wins, not too much dramatics and fireworks and stuff like that. And then it ended up being one of the games of the season. It was pretty surreal to kind of be there watching the goals just fly in. Brighton obviously came back 3 times to, so they did good, showed lots of resilience and character. But yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the stats here. 72% possession, 33 shots on goal to Brentford's 7, 15 shots on target to Brentford's 5. And then we were just talking about it before we came on air. Brighton set a record, Premier League record, I believe, for being the first team in the 30 or so years history of the competition to have every single outfield player having at least 2 shots on goal. I mean, it was nuts. I mean, it was so hard to keep track on. I remember because obviously Brentford took the lead, bit of a sloppy goal. Dunk caught out, a rare time where he was sort of left flat-footed. Pontus Jansson came in and headed it from close range to give them the lead. And then brilliant route one goal from Jason Steele. Goalkeepers don't get many assists, but that was an absolute peach of one. Just, pearled it down the field. Pearled it? I don't know why I said that. Pinged it 60 yards down the field. And then lovely little lofted lob from with the sand wedge from Mitoma over the keeper. And then I was literally typing away a tweet and then in the blog, and I hadn't finished uploading that. And then Brentford scored. I actually didn't see. I kept missing the replay, but yeah, I think it was from a throw-in, and then they won. Classic. They won like a flick on second ball, and then 90 seconds later it's 2-1. Danny Welbeck, who Zerbi actually said after the game was probably the best player on the pitch, scored a nice headed goal. And he gave a little bit back to the Brentford fans who were sort of taunting him a little bit, saying, I won't say the exact quote, but paraphrasing, "You're just a bad Ivan Toney." But then he, took his header really well. So I was very happy for him because obviously he's had about an underpar season, not scored that many goals, just a handful so far, and he's had some injuries as well. So, good for him. And then it was like, obviously half-time, 2-2, breathe, and then really sloppy goal. Another set-piece goal conceded. I think that's maybe the 19th or 20th Brentford have scored from set-pieces this season, and I think like the 15th that Brighton have conceded from set-pieces. That's probably a weakness of theirs. And Alan Shearer in Match of the Day went on to say that is, perhaps an area of concern for Brighton. But then again, Brighton at times don't know when they're beaten, and really good sort of persistence. They didn't sort of drop their heads when they were 3-2 down. They kept on going. The stats was, really in their favour, and then a really well taken penalty from World Cup winner McAllister. So absolutely nuts game. Obviously Brighton up to 6th, level with Brentford on 43 points, but they have 2 games in hand. It was like there was a lot of good to it, and then a lot of maybe thinking, there's a bit of concern here, defence especially. But yeah, an absolute treat for the neutral. But yes, many questions and not as many answers maybe after that one. What about you?
I mean, it was just ridiculous, wasn't it? Like, the game had everything, and I think it was just for me as well. Coming out of that, I think in any other scenario, I would be really hacked off the fact that we only drew that match because we were so dominant in the way we approached the game, and it was just the fact that really Tony was on good form, and a couple of other Brentford players, and it just clicks for them. I think I remember seeing a stat that they're very, very good at set pieces, Brentford. I think they're like the top scoring from set pieces in the Premier League this season. And we just didn't seem to know how to deal with them in those situations. Scored from a throw-in and scored from the free kick as well, which didn't help matters. And they were very much a threat whenever they were in our final third. And it was just kind of like all squeaky bum time. Every single time they got the ball. But I think it's just, I think it's also fantastic. It's testament to how both teams have approached in their philosophies and their style of plays and how it really came about in that match. And both of us, justifiably, fighting for Europe, both of us know what it takes, and both teams made the most out of that situation and made it very clear to everyone else that, we're very much equals in all sense of the word now, and we're both hungry to go and get Europe. So, I think they very much, if anyone in the top six or fighting for top six place is watching that game, they're going to be thinking these two mean business, and they're not holding back at all for the rest of the season. So it's testament. I think We Are Brighton, to put it summed up really well, like saying like it's testament to all those who tried to do the European Super League, like those teams who wanted their own unique tournament, and it just didn't work out. But it was insulting to teams like us who are on the up and really are knocking on the door and just giving them that fair challenge. It was just a fantastic game all round. It had everything in it and some. So, I mean, that penalty at the end, I was just screaming because I could see Brennan Nodte going absolutely mental, saying it's a handball, it's handball. And then Michael Oliver's just there taking his time, like looking at the screen. I thought, yeah, it's a penalty. Happy days. Really surprised it wasn't a red card. But I think that's also kind of saves Undav's blushes in that case, because if that's the case, then it wasn't a goal scoring opportunity, which meant that he was going over anyway. So the defender was very lucky in the fact that Undav just didn't control the ball enough in that penalty. So again, Undav's blushes were very much saved then, and McAllister's penalty was just fantastic again. That guy, I don't think I can love that guy even more than I could, but yeah, he goes and does stuff like that, and I just think, God, this guy's incredible. So, yeah, the only thing I can say is that bloody hell, what a game!
Yeah, I just on that point about the Undav thing, I think I could be wrong, but when Fulham lost to Manchester United in the FA Cup,
Yep.
and I think Willian was sent off for basically handball on the line. I think the difference there was that the fact that he was literally the last man. If he wasn't there, it would have gone in. Whereas there's probably a little bit of doubt with Undav's shot, Raya, who was there in that sort of vicinity and was obviously on great form. There was maybe a little bit more doubt, therefore it wasn't as clear cut as a red card. But yeah, a real spectacle. I guess. Well, yeah, I think just to sort of add to it, do you think this game shows that Brighton can sort of qualify for Europe, or do you think it doesn't, or is it not enough to really go by, do you think?
There's a lot of positives that we can take out of this, and we'll be talking about a certain someone who loves saying that phrase when he was here and in his now former job as well. But I think the only way
Who could you be talking about? We'll get onto that later.
I think the point will be good if we beat Fulham. It'll only work if we can actually
You mean Bournemouth?
Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Bournemouth, yes. If we beat Bournemouth tomorrow, then that draw is a good draw. If we get anything other than a win at Bournemouth, then we're heading down a slippery slope, because we've got an opportunity here to have a bit of a safety net, a bit of breathing space over Brentford, and just closing the gap above us that little bit more, and also a bit of a cushion on us on Liverpool of all teams as well.
Yep.
We just need to really just take the positives from Brentford, learn the mistakes, iron out the mistakes that we had at Brentford, make sure they don't repeat at Bournemouth, because Bournemouth are also a bit of a bogey team for us. and Dean Court, or Vitality Stadium, whatever you're calling it nowadays, isn't exactly one where we've got a promising record at either. So we really need to just we need to get the wins where we really need the wins, and if we get the wins where winning at certain places isn't very common for us, then we're in good stead. But we need to be in the driving seat. We need to be in pole position in this race, and I think the best way to do that is a win at Bournemouth tomorrow. If that happens, great draw at the weekend. If not, then it's an iffy draw.
Yes. So obviously you not so subtly alluded to it just a little bit earlier, but let's dive on into the next big talking point over the weekend. So former Brighton boss Graham Potter was relieved of his duties at Chelsea after less than 7 months in charge as their head coach there. Obviously, he left Brighton to much, well, it was an ignominious exit, let's say that. And he didn't last 7 months. He didn't even last 7 months, which is crazy, you know, after more than 3 years at Brighton, which really shows, I think, how the different hire and fire and views and, you know, that sort of thing at Brighton and Chelsea. So he did also have a couple of sort of pot shots at Brighton during his time there, you know, some not so subtle digs about how, you know, Brighton, if he wanted to have the easy life, he could stay at Brighton, and, you know, he wanted a challenge, so he got Chelsea. So, you know, it just, as we've said, you know, the guy with, I think, a master's in emotional intelligence wasn't using that particularly, I think, at times, a bit tactless, maybe callous. But, Tom, thoughts on Graham Potter's sacking from Chelsea? And also the fact that Bruno Salter is now their interim head coach.
Yeah, look, there's a lot we could dissect on this. Ultimately, we could see this coming. I think a lot of us saw this coming after just the first few weeks there. I think the way that we played against them at home, if you look at the quality of both teams on paper, like there should have only ever been one clear winner. But there's such a poison chalice at Chelsea for so many years now. It just seems to be whoever gets it just doesn't seem to be the right person. I read something that was quite interesting. Todd Boehly is the first. Todd Boehly has sacked 2 first-team managers in a single season as a Chelsea owner. Roman Abramovich has never done that. For someone who's actually gone on record about how he wants to bring in a bit more stability and longevity to the role, and he's gone and just sacked Tuchel, which I think shocked everyone in the world football. No one saw it coming, despite the fact they lost in their opening group stage match in the Champions League. To now sacking Potter when it was clearly obvious they're not really fighting for anything. They haven't been fighting for anything for a while now. And just it seemed to me that losing to Villa seemed to be the nail on the coffin for Potter's reign. It did seem a bit of an odd one because I felt if they were going to sack him, they would have done it earlier and they would have got someone in anyway. Nagelsmann's apparently gone on record to say he's not interested in the Chelsea job, which surprises me. So the only way Boehly would sack someone, it seems, if you look at the whole thing with Tuchel, is that he's got someone lined up. He wanted Potter, so he sacks Tuchel, got Potter in. He sacks Potter, but we don't know who he's chasing at the moment. So it will be really interesting to see who they bring in. I can't see Nagelsmann being one. He's not really one for long-term projects. I know he's only 35, but he's been in management for quite a while.
Because he's not been around for very long.
He's been at Munich for a season and a bit. He was at Leipzig for a season, and he was at Hoffenheim for 80% of his managerial career. So the way he transformed Hoffenheim was great, and he got a lot of praise for it. Didn't do that well at Leipzig, I might add, and he's done all right at Bayern Munich. But the way that they've been this season, you can understand why he's been sacked. He hasn't got the results that they wanted, and they haven't really dominated the Bundesliga as much as they would, and they kind of like they expect it now at the club. So his sacking was a long time coming, but I can't see him just walking in and making that impact and being a long-term successor at Chelsea either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Also brought a lot of people from Chelsea, so they were hoping that longevity came in. Personally, for me, I think they should have just kept Potter on for another year. I think they should have just wiped out this season as a write-off and said, right, next season you make the impact. And I think we could have been, if that was to happen, I will be saying that I'm worried about Chelsea because they will be a force to be reckoned with next season. But it, Chelsea are in this position again where history seems to be repeating itself with a different owner. So I'm not worried now.
I think, yeah, just to add on that, I think one thing that's quite interesting is the fact that obviously, you know, a lot of the bad blood that, you know, Brighton fans have towards Graham Potter is the fact that, you know, so much of the backroom staff went with him, you know, to obviously I think people would have expected the likes of Billy Reid, Bjorn Hamburg, Kyle McCauley would go, but the fact that club legend Bruno went, Ben Roberts, you know, very highly regarded goalkeeping coach went, and then the point I'm going to make is here, Paul Winstanley obviously left a month or two after, and apparently he's the one who's actually been behind this decision to sack Graham Potter, which reminds you of, I think, you know, Julius Caesar story of sort of stabbing you in the back somewhat. So it's a strange one.
It's a Judas move, that is.
So
that's so Shakespearean. I love it.
In it. So yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to feel different this to me. I personally don't have any, you know, grudges towards Graham. He was always very nice to me at the press conferences. You know, Brighton on my, you know, I'm a big fan of Brighton, but you know, but I 100% get the animosity towards him. But I won't sort of wish him ill. But it has, yeah. I mean, even if you're just an outsider looking in, it does look rather amusing in some respects. But
yeah, I just want to just jump in on that. I don't really have that much animosity. I think it's the way that he dealt with it afterwards that frustrated a lot of people on the fan base. I think a lot of people expected him to go. We expected him to go to bigger and better things. And Chelsea are a bigger and better thing on paper. Like, no one would argue that. He was getting paid £12 million a year at Chelsea. Well, was supposed to. It didn't even last that long. But, you know, when you get offered that much money, of course you're going to just jump ship and go on for bigger and better things. It's just the things that he said afterwards. Like, if he wanted to do things easily, you'd stayed at Brighton, or you've got nothing to apologise for. All right, okay, you don't have to be that genuine, but you could just be a bit more, I don't know, just
classy.
Yeah, just be a bit more classy with it all. Just be a bit like, I apologise for the fans. I know it's not the best thing to go, but you know, sometimes in this career, in this line of work, you get offered an opportunity and you just can't say no. And you know, I've got to live with that. That was something that was come through my thought process. It's not hard to have a PR guy,
yeah,
on your side and just go down this route, because people are going to ask you these questions. But yeah, that's the thing that hacks off a lot of fans, plus the Bruno thing, plus the Ben Roberts thing. But it's just the comments he said afterwards, because football fans, we're a very fragile bunch, and we don't forget that kind of thing. So yeah.
Elephants never forget. Just a quick point. This has just come to me. So feel free to trash this idea or just this thought process. But so I think earlier on, you know, Leandro Trossard, for example, had quotes at the start of De Zerbi's tenure saying, I'd be potentially up for, reuniting with Graham Potter. And I think Caicedo also had similar type comments. But the fact now that he's gone, he's no longer at Chelsea, maybe, and also the fact that Chelsea are 11th in the league and are pretty unlikely to get Europe next season at any level, potentially that is a good bit of news for Brighton in the sense that, no one's going to jump ship there because, one, they're in a better position. Two, there's no kind of, love for the Chelsea because Graham Potter's not there anymore. And also over time, you've not heard any more of those comments because everyone is just loving life under De Zerbi. Solly March basically says he's the best coach he's ever played for. Lallana is just constantly heaping praise on him, saying he's such a forward thinker and he just loves the way he sees the game. Lewis Dunk as well. Levi Colwill said, he's loving his time here. Everyone is really, completely behind the Roberto De Zerbi project. So that's just a little tidbit I just thought of on the hop. So but unless you want to jump in, do you want to move on?
No, let's move on. So yeah, you summed it up perfectly, really. What needs to be said there. So yeah, let's move on to the man himself. The man from Italy, Roberto De Zerbi. So Richie, you were actually obviously you're at the training centre. You've been speaking to him ahead of the match at Bournemouth. What are the key takes from it?
Roberto De Zerbi. So the main takeaways. First off, he was. I won't go into this for a long time because obviously we've covered it fairly well. But he was asked straight up about the double sacking because let's not forget that Brendan Rodgers was also dismissed by Leicester on Sunday. So that's 2 in a day, which is pretty nuts. So he basically said, I'm very sorry. It's bad news for coaches. I do think sort of too much importance is placed on coaches because, players are basically the most important people for the success of a club. But yeah, he did also say, I want to say thanks for Graham Potter just in terms of leaving the players that he has with the attitude, mentality, and the quality they have. Next up, he talked about injury news. So Evan Ferguson is fit for the Bournemouth game, which is great news. He, I think, picked up an unspecified injury over the international break whilst playing for the Republic of Ireland, and he missed the game against Brentford, but he's all good to play, which is nice because, just have him as an option if he doesn't start, or if he does, Welbeck also scored, which is great. So having that, maybe just one or two coming off the bench or starting, whatever, that's good news. Not so good, sadly, on Lamptey. He did say that Tariq Lamptey's situation is difficult, and we will see in the next week. So I'm hoping this is not going to be like another hamstring injury, and he was out for a long, long time, 10 months, I think, in 2020 and 2021. I really hope it's okay. It's only been a few weeks, but it's sort of been a case where it's been, he might be okay for this one, and then it's sort of been game by game, week by week put back. But I hope he's okay. He also spoke about how, once again, Brighton are dreaming of Europe. And he actually sort of alluded to the fact that this busy run of fixtures is good preparation, maybe, because he said, I want my team to play 3 times a week next season in whatever European competition that is. So, so just on the first part there, Tom, obviously sackings, team news, and then European dreaming. What do you make of
that? I think the team news is great news, really. That the fact that Evan Ferguson's fully fit, raring to go, is fantastic. I think we missed him a bit at Brentford. I think he would have offered another dynamic to the game, and who knows, could have finished it off for us. The guy's a goal-scoring machine. I think he was really, really impressive for Ireland. I think Ireland are going to be very excited with what he could potentially bring to the table. The guy's only 18, which is utterly ridiculous. It should be a crime to be that good at football at that age, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that just because I am very, very jealous of it. I think he's mesmerizing to watch. He's just so good. There was a former coach that tweeted about how he's as close to a complete striker as you can get, and you can see why. I don't even have to explain it. Brighton fans know the performances and the moments I'm talking about. But just to bring up one, that goal he took against Grimsby Town was just superb. People on Twitter said Berbatov-esque. Like, this is the kind of caliber we're dealing with, and it makes me dizzy right now. The fact that we have someone that talented. I am gutted about Tariq Lamptey because for him it's just the guy's an unreal talent, and he's been so hard done by with injuries, and then when he gets one step forward, it just seems to be two steps back, no matter how you paint it. But every time he comes back, he has a little bit of spell to get his rhythm going, and then you see him back to his best. And I hope he gets to his best quickly, because he deserves a shot at the top. I think he's quality. He made the right decision come to us rather than staying at Chelsea. I just hope that this is the end of all the injury worries he's had in the past, because he's such an unreal talent, and he's a great asset to the squad. And if we go into Europe, we need depth, and someone like him to compete with the likes of Veltman at right wing back, right back. He's a fantastic player to do that. I'm trying to think what else. We had T News. What was the other one? What were the other ones he was deserving?
Basically, I guess this run of busy fixtures preparing Brighton for Europe.
Yeah, look, we touched on this last week. This time last week, about how big April is going to be. We got a result at home against Brentford, and we're now no longer back at home until we face Wolves at the end of the month. And by the time we're back at the Amex, we could either be talking about how the season's done or how the season is still going on for us. This is where the business end really comes in this season. It's make or break. All but two clubs really are fighting for something, which is utterly ridiculous. You've got the top 7, 8 clubs fighting for a place in Europe. You've got the bottom 8 sides, or bottom 9, fighting for survival. It's mad to think that there's an 8-9 team relegation dogfight here, which makes just that situation just going to be one hell of a merry-go-round, because I think we're not going to see who goes down until the very end of the season. And looking at the fixtures at the end of the season, there's a couple of 6-pointers. There's a couple of ones where basically all the teams are fighting for everything. Really, the two teams that are fighting for nothing at the moment are Villa and Chelsea. And we've seen how that went. After that, everyone else is fighting for something. So we're going to be in for a really dramatic end in this Premier League season. As a neutral, fantastic. But as a Brighton fan, I want to go to Villa Park at the end of the season, get something out of this, and really hope, and hopefully we're celebrating and dreaming of Europe. It's big wishful thinking, I think, but I think the way we're going about this is the right way. But we need the results, and the only way we're going to be doing that is if we talk ahead of Wolves and thinking we still got European football on the table.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Villa. I mean, they've really just come out of nowhere. I'm just looking at the table now. They're up to 9th. They've leapfrogged Chelsea, obviously, they beat at the weekend, and Fulham. They're only 2 points behind Brighton. They have played 2 games more, but I mean, they've really sort of maybe a bit of a dark horse for Europe there. Hopefully not, but I think they've won 4 of the last 5 games, so they really are a potential contender there. But yes, just continuing on from the press conference, we talked about it a little bit earlier. He was asked if he was worried about set pieces, as they are. I think they've conceded 15 goals from that sort of facet of the game, and he said, "No, I think we are defending very, very well in set pieces. It can happen to concede a goal, and that's not a problem. But in general, at set pieces, you have to put in more attention and concentration. sometimes you can lose something in that situation. We have a lot of players with different skills, and we can suffer something in set pieces, but it's not a problem, not the main problem. He also spoke about Brighton's away record. Apparently, they're unbeaten since mid-October, and a little bit of well, as I said before, Zerbi, he's definitely in good form at the moment, press conference wise, and he said to a journalist, "You speak too much about this record," and then he joked, "I'm not superstitious, but October the 21st, which I think is the last time that Brighton lost a game away from home." So, and interestingly enough, he had a very, very good record when he was manager at Shakhtar and Sassuolo. So, yes. And then finally, and we can obviously go on to this next bit here, spoke about Bournemouth, and he said Bournemouth are a very good team with very good players. We have to be alert. It will be difficult. They have quality. And also, he said they put up a good fight against Brighton at the Amex, and obviously it was Karen Matoma's late goal that secured the win there. So obviously they've picked up again. It's just so hard to predict the bottom, the bottom half of the table. They've won 2 of the last 3. Obviously, one was a win over Liverpool after Liverpool had beaten Manchester United 7-0. Then they got a good comeback win against Fulham. It looked like they were down and out in the first half, and then a team sort of rejuvenated in the second. So, Tom, thoughts on that game, and what's your prediction for the trip to the Vitality?
Like I said to you before, Brentford have been a bit of a bogey team for us. Bournemouth are a bogey team for us, but we need to get a result there. And I think the guys are going to go in that match knowing full well that they need to win to keep the European chances afloat. I can see this going very well for us. I think it's going to be a 2-0 win for us.
2-0, like it. Yeah, I feel. I feel this will be a tough one, but I think it's going to be a repeat of the score at the Amex. I think it won't be. I don't think it'll be anywhere as near as high scoring as the Brentford one. I think it's going to be a 1-0 win. Yeah, I think this could be a tough one. It's only been a couple of days since, obviously, the Brentford game. They are going to probably have to rotate some players. At the weekend, he actually did say that Adam Webster will start. So I assume that means Cole will drop to the bench. So, and he also talked about the possibility of Julio Enciso actually starting, who I did think was pretty bright when he came off against the bench against Brentford. He said that Julio's ready to start. Sometimes he needs to think of the team and not be an individual, but that's normal. He has personality, he has courage. Bonanotte is the same, but he arrived more recently. So, yeah, I really hope it is a win, because I think, Brighton obviously do have games in hand, but you need to win those games in hand for you to have a good chance of getting far up the table. And also because they have, more games to play and 2 games that have still yet to be scheduled in, I think, Man City and Newcastle, at some point sometimes that sheer amount of games can become a bit of a grind and too much, and it can have a negative effect on the team. So, yeah, a team who are fighting down near the bottom. Brighton got a great record on the road. I really, really hope they win. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a draw, but I'm going to go for a 1-0.
Oh, I don't like this pessimism from you, Richie. We'll find out tomorrow night when hopefully come 9:30 when the full-time whistle blows. We'll be talking about a Brighton win, no doubt. But guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoying it on the sound waves wherever you are. As always, like, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter and social media. Until then, guys, take care, and we'll be chatting ahead of this weekend's action as well. Take care.